some of the state strategic R&D priorities, and also talk about the changes that are occurring at the board level for funding opportunities. So I serve also as Louisiana EPSCoR project director. So I'll tell you a little bit about the federal grants as well. So just to start, we have many different campuses in our state, and I've listed different systems. So we have the LSU system with 10 campuses, University of Louisiana system, ULL is part of it, has its own system, and we have Southern system. And then there are, of course, the community colleges. They have their own system, which means they have their own presidents, board of supervisors, etc. And then there is the private university system, where they got Tulane and Xavier fall into that category. Now these four columns here, these are the public institutions. These are under the purview of the Louisiana Board of Regents for programmatic affairs. So the Louisiana Board of Regents has the coordination authority for that. Louisiana Board of Regents, as a commissioner, lieutenant commissioner for about 3 years now, Dr. Lala. And we have 6 different sections. There's the academic affairs, finance, facilities, planning, resources, and then legal and external affairs, statewide programs. And then we have sponsored programs. We represent the sponsored programs. And statewide programs, of course, those are programs like LONI, Louisiana Optical Network Infrastructure, falls in there, Lewis Libraries, and other programs. Sponsored programs administers both state and federal programs. Now, as was mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the support fund is funded through the Kevin Riley Louisiana Education Quality Trust Fund. Many of you may have heard LEQTF. That's what this stands for. And the federal side comes from the Louisiana Established Program to Stimulate Competitive Research, known as EPSCoR. Now, EPSCoR formerly was called experimental. So the experimental programs to stimulate competitive research. The name was changed recently in view of the recognition that it's been a 40 years experiment. So they decided to change the name. It's not law, actually. It started with NSF, as I'll show you in a few minutes, and then, of course, there were other federal agencies. Whether they call themselves EPSCoR or not is immaterial. NIH, National Institute of Health, they call themselves IDEA. And there's DOE, Department of Energy, NASA, etc. So from the support fund, sponsored programs, a few slides from there, and then Carrie Robinson will pick up on this and will describe to you some of the major changes. So the Constitution mandates that any or all of the following higher educational purposes can be devoted to enhance either carefully defined research effort at public and private universities. Note that Tulane also qualifies, the last column that I showed. Then endowment of chairs and scholars. They qualify for all the programs that sponsored program runs. And then enhancement of quality academic research. There's another category, and recruitment of superior grad students. Now these are the areas that I just mentioned. Here's a bar chart or pie chart that I wanted to show you, for you to see what it has done for our state in totality. The sponsored programs pretty much started, that support fund started in 1986, so it's about 30 years old. And so far, it has provided the state over $800 million of support. So a lot of the things that you see around you, a lot of the infrastructure is due to this type of support. So it is important to know if there are changes for you to know how to go about taking advantage of the new changes. Now, a little bit about EPSCoR. Right about the same time, Louisiana became an EPSCoR state. So 40 years ago, in 1978 or so, Congress realized that the majority of federal funds were just going to only a few states in the country. Going to California, Massachusetts, Texas. And that meant that institutions such as Stanford and Caltech, and UT Austin, MIT, they were getting most of the funds. And many of the other states were pretty much left behind. They could not really compete directly at the time. So one of the important statements in NSF's National Science Foundation's charter is that there should be no undue concentration. So in that recognition in 1978, Congress said, we're going to try to set aside a lot of money where states that have not received their fair share, if you will, to compete for research so that they could become competitive. Hence the name EPSCoR, experimental program to stimulate competitive research. Now, keep in mind that no money is given to an EPSCoR state. You have to actually qualify to become an EPSCoR state. You have to compete at a national level. But you don't have to compete with Caltech or MIT at the time. So Louisiana became an EPSCoR state in 1987. So right around the time where support fund was established. And if you look at the dollars here, starting with NSF and then NASA, NIH, DOE, and all the other agencies, considerable amount of funds have been pumped into our research infrastructure. So, and then Border Regions has been a partner from day one. So if you add up the monies that we have received because we're an EPSCoR state and the support fund altogether, we reach a number something like $1.4 billion. That is significant. Also significant to recognize is the fact that the leadership of EPSCoR, we have a committee of 21 members, and your institution is represented. They have the leadership to actually look at our strength and to see where we have the chance to compete at the national level. So the leadership of EPSCoR put together Louisiana's Science and Technology Plan. And in fact, the EPSCoR chair, President Les Geis, was the main force behind this. And he developed something we call First Louisiana. It stands for Fostering Innovation through Research in Science and Technologies in Louisiana. So this document outlines where we are now and where we want to go and how we can get there. So the vision statement clarifies the fact that universities need to be the driving force for economic development. Why was this plan developed? Well, number one is National Science Foundation told us, if you want to apply for a big grant, you need to have a science and technology plan. In fact, when we submit our big 5-year research proposal, we have to submit this particular plan with it. And the reviewers look at those very carefully. So it responds to federal expectation. It also aligns itself with the board's research master plan. And it helps guide institutions to develop their own research agenda accordingly. So the vision is that by 2025, Louisiana universities will lead the state's dynamic innovation economy through the advancement of science and technology, both in research and education. So the question is then, how do we get there? Our job is foundational sciences. How do we become leaders to drive the innovation economy? Well, if you start from the foundational sciences, and your job is to do what the vision says, then you got to help the high target growth industries at the very top. Foundational sciences, as you know, these are essentially your physics, chemistry, math, STEM education. So you hire the best talented folks that you could find to cover these areas. And then you invest in areas where the state has already invested, in areas where you think you might have a chance in order to compete at the national level, particularly to go after national centers. National centers such as science and technology centers, engineering research centers, those are centers that become magnet to bring the best talented faculty, to bring grad students, and to give identity to the research that we do. So the core enabling areas are material sciences, computational sciences, and biosciences. These were identified as areas that the state had already invested. Information technology, this building, in fact, testament to information technology. Now, emanating from this, of course, would be research that one could do in order to help with main areas that are interest to the state. And EPSCoR, by definition, is a partnership between the state and federal government. So areas such as energy, coastal environment, digital, bio, and ag are areas that we could have translational research. And then help our core industry, science and technology sectors and reach the high growth target industries from energy production, the coastal resilience, and digital media, cyber, medical applications, and bioengineering. This plan is available for you on the web. You can read about it, and essentially all it's telling you is build your talent, build infrastructure, build centers of excellence, and invest in where we have resources available and with partnership to industry and foster entrepreneurship and commercialization. So strongly encourage you that if you're writing proposals to the federal government, be it EPSCoR or non-EPSCoR, the opening paragraph of your proposal should say something like, this proposal is aligned with our science and technology plan and contributes in this way in the rest of your proposal. Because really the success rate between a proposal that gets funded and one that doesn't get funded sometimes is very small. This one puts you at a higher level of success. So S&T plan was developed in 2010. Later, Master Plan Research Advisory Committee, we call it MPRAC, in 2012 was established. And again, we have in this room members who served on that, particularly Dean Zaki. Now, MPRAC collaborated with Louisiana Economic Development Office, hired Battelle, R&D group. Battelle came to look at our infrastructure, to look at the assets that we have in the state, and also to look at where we have a chance to compete at a national level. And they issued a report that targeted 5 areas or recommended 5 areas that we should be investing in. So specifically, advanced manufacturing and materials was selected as number 1 in their report. And then clean technology and energy, coastal water, and digital media and Workforce Life Sciences and Bioengineering. These were the ones that they had outlined. Later, MPRAC established a task force that again studied the report, went out and interviewed people, and by the way, I believe Patel interviewed 53 different industries, local and elsewhere, to see what makes sense for Louisiana. And the MPRAC task force identified further, after consultants looked at their reports, 3 highest priorities. These were advanced manufacturing and materials, life sciences and bio, and then digital sciences and enterprise software. So these 3 areas were deemed to be in that order of highest priority in the state. Again, if you're writing proposals, I strongly recommend using this language that these are of priorities, particularly if your proposal is in these areas. And we have been acting accordingly to this plan since 2010. If you look at what we've been getting at the national level, competing and successfully competing, one grant that we received, $20 million, is one of the largest grants that Louisiana has received from National Science Foundation. This is for advanced manufacturing, $20 million, and $4 million match from the Louisiana Board of Regents. There are 38 faculty members, about 140 individuals, including students. It's a 5-year program, and if you were not in there to begin with, by the way, we did a statewide competition, and the winning proposal at the state level was submitted to NSF and won the competition at the national level. If you've not been part of this to begin with, well, there are seed grants that we put out RFP for. In fact, Dr. Jonathan Rush is here. He was one of the recipients from ULL, and he was very instrumental in helping us, actually. About 4 weeks ago, we went to the National Science Foundation to report on our achievements for our, what they call a reverse site visit. And Jonathan came, he gave a fantastic presentation. That was well received. Here's another grant called Track 2 at NSF. This is for partnership between Louisiana and another state, or it could be 2 other EBSCO states. This one is in partnership with Mississippi. We're looking at smart polymers. There is a lot of industry activity going on. This is coming to an end soon. Another grant is Department of Energy. This grant is for building neutron scattering infrastructure in Louisiana, $5.5 million. This is also coming to an end, and we have a pending proposal at the Department of Energy now for continuation of this. While research is at the very centerpiece of what we do, we are always very concerned, and we want with educational aspects and the broader impact. So NSF supported what they call a Track 3. It's called STEM Discovery. Here is where we bring students and teachers together in the summertime for a couple of weeks, and they train the students to do design work and get them excited. These are at the high school level. And although the money here doesn't look to be very substantial, a 5-year program for $750,000. But you got to watch what NSF does with EBSCO. NSF experiments with EBSCO, and NSF is a trend-setting federal agency. All other agencies follow NSF a few years later. So NSF started this, and now this has morphed into a much bigger program. A program called Includes, which in fact you could read about it. The RFPs have come out. That is again to a partnership with industry and partnership for education only, and bringing in URM, underrepresented minorities, much bigger dollars associated with it. NSF nowadays has been going also to institutions, directly rather than coming to the EPSCoR offices and inviting institutions to submit proposals on specific type of foci. Two foci that they felt is of national interest. One has to do with understanding the brain. The other one is sustainable food, energy, and water systems. So they made this announcement a couple of years ago and invited campuses to participate. So this particular proposal that was funded is by LSU in partnership with Kentucky. This is just the LSU's portion, $6 million total. This falls into food and energy and water. Another one that Louisiana Tech is in the lead with Alabama and Arkansas. This one has to do with understanding the brain, so particularly understanding seizure. Now, again, as I'll show you in a minute, if you've been paying attention to the EPSCoR request for proposals, you will see that NSF at large is entertaining proposals in these areas now, at much higher funding level. We also have competitive research grants from NASA. This one is again in materials and self-heating polymers. NIH has a fantastic program. Louisiana is one of the leaders. There are currently 27 campuses taking advantage of climate-related research and education. It has brought in $130 million, quite a bit of funding. NASA EPSCoR, we have proposals pending at NASA for a substantial amount of money right now. And if you look at the types of research that they fund through EPSCoR, you see that there's a very large, there's a good breadth and depth from materials and manufacturing to aeronautics and vibration and genetic assessments. So no matter what you're interested in, there might be possibility for you to apply for these. Now, I've talked about research quite a bit. If you're a junior faculty in particular, you may say, hey, I need some seed funding. I have some ideas in manufacturing, for example, as I believe a couple of people here were funded recently. So we provide seed funding if you'd like to get involved in these types of research. We put out annual competitions. There are travel grants for emerging faculty. So if you decide that you want to go to NSF and visit with program officers or DOE or whatever, there's funding available. We provide research, we provide travel grant for junior faculty, and if you say, hey, I want to take a senior faculty with me to introduce me to different program officers, that's also a possibility. And I was just at NSF on Monday and Tuesday. There might even be a possibility that next year we'll have a larger group of junior faculty come in May and bring a whole bunch of the program officers at one time. So these are available. We provide phase 0 for those of you who are interested in establishing SBIR, small business, or STTRs. And there is supervised undergraduate research grants for underrepresented minorities if you send out RFPs all the time. So a variety of ways you could get involved with EPSCoR. There is a grant called a LINK that's providing you with funds to go to a national lab, particularly in the summertime. It's very useful for people to go, not just to give a talk, not just to travel, but to stay there for a couple of weeks, take data, minimum of 2 weeks, to a maximum of 10 weeks. You can send your grad students or take your grad student with you. So if you look at the totality of the impact of support fund as a whole, you see that almost all campuses and even community colleges have taken advantage of our monies that we have been providing so far. Now, I thought I'd share with you some of the initiatives at NSF. NSF is our biggest funder, and the slides that I have here were presented to us by Richard Matthias last May. He was the Chief Operating Officer, and in fact, on Monday, the Director of NSF, Francis Cordova, essentially presented the same type of slides. So these remain valid. NSF supports projects that would drive the economy. So what does that remind you of? Remind you of our S&T plan. In fact, we have to tell NSF that the projects that we're doing is driving the economy of the state. Projects that enhances our security and also sustains global leadership in research. The areas that, this is NSF at large. These slides have been borrowed from Richard Matthias' presentation a year ago, or exactly a year ago. It says, these are the priority areas at the national level now. Understanding the brain, which they experimented with EPSCoR. Food, water, and energy. Again, the experiment with EPSCoR includes is a bigger version of track 3 and risk and resilience. These should fit Louisiana's agenda. We should be able to compete in these very successfully. For the future, they have outlined, this is NSF's plan, these research ideas and what they call process ideas. Research ideas are harnessing the 21st century science and engineering. You might be in I think the ULO is in a great position to compete for these. This is data science. Shaping the new human, that's essentially how we interact, or person-machine interaction, how you interact with your phone, how your car essentially tells you when to stop, when to turn over. This is Windows on Universe. This is to address questions like how did the universe begin? Having the infrastructure that we have in Louisiana, such as LIGO, you should be in the driver's seat. And in fact, the good news is that the spokesman for LIGO, Gabriela Gonzalez, was just inducted into the National Academy of Sciences. Convergence. This says that the most important ideas are at the interface between different disciplines. So the stovepiping is not the way to go. This is a quote from the National Academy of Sciences, where it says that we need to be collaborating together from different departments and different institutions, different campuses, to do truly multidisciplinary research. We cannot compete at a national level on our own, one campus alone. We need to collaborate. And that's where EPSCoR has played a major role at breaking the boundaries between campuses and getting campuses to collaborate with one another. And that's why we have a 20-member committee that has memberships from all many other campuses that do research. Mid-scale research infrastructure, this is MRI. Many of you are familiar with major research instrumentation, and now there's a recognition that MRI alone is not enough. We need the facility construction to go with it, and there is more funding in this particular division now. So I encourage you to think about this. And finally, going back to this conversion, it's very important for us to join forces and try to put the appropriate people that could be in the conversations at NSF and elsewhere. That is, we need to be nominating people to serve on those big committees, on the National Science Board, committees of visitors,
folks who actually hear things first, so they could come back and inform us in these types of settings. So we will not be left behind, so we could know what initiatives are afoot at the national level. With this, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague to talk about support fund